We'll now move on to our next panel, which is titled Turning the Tide on Waste. It will delve into the complexities of food waste reduction and explore innovative strategies to minimise food waste throughout the supply chain. Over to you, Mary.
Thanks so much, Josh, and thank you very much to Matthew and Stephen for those presentations. It's like speed dating, all this great information, but we can only have a little snippet of it and then we have to move on. So this is a chance to dig a little bit deeper. And Stephen, I was really interested that you said, and the stat is old, but that more than 76% of Australians want to reduce food waste, and yet they're also most responsible for it at the same time. Is that a bit of cognitive dissonance going on there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we may want something, but then life gets in our way sometimes. And if we're busy and the kids want something and, you don't have time to get to the shops or what have you, then, other things come into play. But the important thing is the ambition is there. And I think when we're trying to talk to politicians around, is this a vote winner? Yes, it is. People want to reduce their food waste.
Yeah.
A lot of the time they just don't know how as well.
I want to stick with you for a sec because you were pointing out the fact that with the current funding, we can't meet the goals that we've set for ourselves. And I know both of you have clear views on how much more supported the food waste industry needs to be successful. So what's the gap? Why is there this challenge to get the funding that we need when it's so obvious what the benefits are?
Generally, a lot of our funding comes from government and we're dealing with budget cycles and so on, so every 4 years. The CRC program is somewhat unique in Australia in that we did manage to get a 10-year funding stream out of that, and that brought, it was a catalyst to bring industry on board as well, and industry more than match what the government was putting in. We won't have another chance at that, and most of our funding since then has been much shorter term. It's been 3 years or 2 years, and so we're still a fair way short of where we need to be to achieve that target. The important thing to get out of my talk before, and sorry it was all rushed towards the end, was that this is an achievable goal. We will be releasing our strategic business plan at our summit in July, and while the modelling is still being refined, between us and all our partners, we believe that we can achieve this goal. To be honest, we probably won't achieve a huge number of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They're aspirational in many ways, and they're not legally binding. I think you said that, Matthew, as well. But this is one we can achieve. And, I really encourage everyone in the room today to get involved because, I would love to, as a country who was quite late to the piece in terms of trying to halve this food waste target. We often say we're 10 years behind Europe but we're catching up fast, and I think we can be one of the few countries that can achieve the goal. So, really important for me. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew, you've been nodding vehemently this whole time in agreement, but I'm wondering about your perspective, from Grainstone's perspective, on government support and where you think it needs to step up, for people who are trying to be part of the solution.
Sure. I think, generally speaking, there's less funding available for environmental initiatives, or what's perceived as bucketed as environmental initiatives compared to some of the mainstream industry opportunities for Australia. I think that needs to start to change a little bit. We need to be directing more funding towards sort of innovation, impact innovation opportunities, impact startups. We can see the direction we want to get to eventually, and unless we're pouring more early stage funding from private and government sources in that direction, then like Steve said, some of these sustainable development goals are not going to be met. I think the decarbonisation, the climate issue is definitely the core one that everyone talks about because of the ability to quantify that. We've learned about that, but that's just part of the sustainability grand challenge that we need to solve.
And Steve was also talking before about carrots and sticks, and you'd actually talked to me about that when we were speaking previously, but you were saying that there are a lot of sticks and not too many carrots at the moment. So why is that?
Yeah, well, so we see lots of environmental regulation, but on the flip side, I slightly mentioned it there. Like, what if we started to give you sort of some sort of tax discount for meeting certain environmental criteria, or providing some sort of other incentive? Like, of course, we've got to watch the budget and all of that. But there is ways to do it. Develop more incentive-based solutions from a government policy rather than just the sticks.
Do you see it that way, Steve?
Yeah, I do. When I was talking about the carrot, it's really around finding the economic opportunities in a food waste stream, particularly an unavoidable food waste stream. In Europe, they are coming in with mandatory food waste reporting. It was only, I think last week, maybe the week before, that the Senate inquiry into supermarket pricing recommended that the big retailers have to start reporting on food waste levels. It's probably only a couple of years until that comes in, and then that will cascade down in terms of the size of businesses and so on. So it is coming. That's the key sticks I was talking about. Let's get ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Steve, I know you've had involvement in the project that Janet was sharing with us. Can you tell us a little bit more about your involvement and what it will mean for industry?
Yeah, in many ways it's a bit of a holy grail. We've had a few countries work on decision support tools around what to do if you've got a waste stream, and I think Janet's project is just a great example of working with SMEs to really pinpoint what they can do. People tend not to innovate in this area because it's really hard to find good expertise, the time, the money to invest in that innovation, having decision support tools so producers that have an unavoidable waste stream can turn to and work out what they can do, really have a cost-benefit analysis around the options, is critically important if we're going to utilise more unavoidable waste into value-added products. We also need to increase the consumer pool, and hopefully that came through from my talk. I mean, Rescue Pops was a great idea. It's a real shame that it wasn't supported by consumers, and we need to create that interest. When I first started in this process, I had one of the big supermarkets say to me, I would love a whole supermarket row full of upcycled, truly environmentally sustainable products. We're a long way from that at the moment, and I really think that we can still get there, and as part of the circular economy, but we do need the consumer pool.
Yeah. Matthew, how has it been for Greenstone developing a market for your product, and where are you at with that? Because I guess that can expand as well.
Yeah, sure. So there's a few angles there. So our lead product was this high-protein specialty flour. So flour is obviously a massive global market, $400 billion. Specialty flour or low-cost specialty flours is the fastest-growing subset of that market. We can see a real opportunity there. Protein concentrates. There's a range of other ingredients that we're also developing. There was a key metric that Tim mentioned earlier about dollars per square metre at the supermarkets. That's a challenge fundamentally. If the supermarket started to think more about this from a holistic perspective, positioning some of these products on the supermarket shelves in more prime locations can actually start to drive the consumer behaviour change a long way. It doesn't have to always be profit per square metre only, but clearly some of these supermarkets are not B Corps. They haven't adopted anything beyond that core bean counter metric at this stage, but we can hope that they will. Some bigger organisations, Unilever, for example, is moving in that direction. They can see the direction that regulation and consumer and political interests are going in Europe, for instance, and there's some real flagships of hope that are happening right around the world.
And we've only got a minute or so left, Steve, but I'm curious because Europe comes up in almost every single conversation in relation to sustainability. And in this perspective, then, what do you think we can take away, for example, in terms of market development, as we were just talking about, from Europe?
Yeah, it's taken some time to develop the upcycled food market over there, and so it will take time. But I would just encourage people to seek out products that are truly sustainable, that are upcycled. We are looking at upcycled certification in Australia. We don't have that at the moment to really help promote the market.
Yeah, thank you. Any final words from
Very quickly, one thing I didn't mention before is around the funding and so on. One thing producers are dealing with is this issue around packaging versus food waste. And I know we're going to hear a bit more about that at the moment. But while we've got really pressing 2025 packaging targets, food waste has been on the back burner with some producers. And we do need to create that burning platform. And that's something that hopefully comes out of today.
Yeah, as they are profoundly intertwined. Thank you so much, Matthew and Steve.